For those who know what's right. For those wedded to the machines in their bedrooms, their studios, their best friend's garage or basement. For those who negotiate with the system every day to make time for the music that matters. For those who get in debt to fund the fight against the mundane. For those who stay true to their cause even in the face of income and fame through compromise. For those who feel the power of every beat. For those who keep their minds open. For those who encourage and support those pursuing their personal dream. For those who sacrifice relationships to make sure the music is heard. For those for which the music is a lifetime, not a pastime. This is Bass Agenda.
Hi, how you doing? Welcome to Bass Agenda. Got a big show for you this month. 100% focused in on the work and creativity of Stefan Weiss, aka Syrte, aka one half of the two-man team behind the fantastic Science Cult label. Probably don't need an introduction to them, but if you do, recommend checking out recent label highlight mix of some of the stuff on that label on Dark Science Electro. And we spend the first half or so of this show talking about Science Cult and their approach to running a label. And of course, we're going to check out some of the music on there, as well as a ton of Syrte's music. One of my favourite interviews of recent times. Hope you enjoy it. Lots to learn in here for artists and label owners, and lots of hard, abstract electronics to bend your mind to.
This is Syrte, and you are listening to Bass Agenda.
Release yourself. Walk a new path. Unlock the hidden. Open new eyes. Peer beyond boundaries. Abandon the cold, cast away the shackles. Evolve ideation, foster epiphany. Surrender the ego and let go. Relinquish what's locked away. Reformat, split, and recombine. Beyond human. Feel the universe like grains of sand. One becomes many, many become one. Integrate, reformat, split, and recombine. Beyond human.
The first thing I've just got to say, Science Cult, man, congratulations on what is a fantastic label.
Thank you, and the respect is mutual. We really loved Bass Agenda, and so, in fact, I have some of your records here, and I've got a bunch of your releases that I bought digitally. So,
cool.
The respect is very much mutual, and
thanks, man.
I think that just speaks to the spirit of the electro scene in general that I've seen, is that everybody's just really like supportive of each other, and it's all about respect. I've been making music for going on 30 years now, and across a variety of genres. I haven't always done electro. I've done techno, I've done progressive breaks, house music, stuff like that. So but the level of respect and camaraderie that you see in electro especially between not just artists but between labels.
Yeah.
There's
no real sense
of
no real sense of competition, I don't think.
Yeah, there's no competition. In previous iterations of my music career, I've always seen people and labels be very competitive with each other in various capacities, and it always kind of like I mean, I don't care, I just make music for myself, but in some sense it was always kind of like why are they so competitive with each other? I don't understand. Maybe it was from a business perspective, but
I was going to say my theory is that it could be the fact that because literally nobody's making money from Electro, well hardly anyone. It's like, what's the point in getting uptight about competing if nobody's kind of on the commercial front, nobody's really making any headway.
Well, and is anybody really making money in the music industry in general anymore? I mean,
well, that's true. Yeah.
We're getting, as artists, we're getting raped by streaming services.
Yeah, man,
digital sales are. There's something there with digital sales. Bandcamp is or was. I'm not sure where it is now, but Bandcamp is still pretty good. You can't eat. Let's put it that way. As an artist, you can't eat off of music. And even the people I know that where you would think, oh well, they're probably making music for a living. When you get to know them, they're like, oh no, I've got to go to work. Oh, they play 5-6 shows a month, but then they still have to go to work.
Yeah, it's a real shame.
Make real money. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man. But maybe I just say maybe that's a good thing in a way, because it means that for the most part, most people are humble. You get the odd dickhead, but most people are good. Most people are good.
Well, the humility aspect is really important, because what keeps you grounded is what keeps you humble. But more importantly, I think it's also, at least for me, when you're constantly chasing something like the dream of being a full-time musician, right? You try harder, you work harder, you spend more time finding the time to be in the studio. You maybe push yourself a little harder physically too, where you say, well, I really should go to bed at 10 o'clock at night, but I'm going to stay up another couple hours and write music because I just really want to. So I think the whole, not desperation, but it's sort of like, if you have everything, if you're done, if you've arrived and you're making money, then you kind of stop. Like you just, you're no longer pushing yourself to do more, because you're no longer chasing anything, right?
I see. I get you.
I don't know if that's true for everybody. It's certainly true for me.
Yeah.
There were some goals in my life that I reached, and then I was like, oh, okay, I'm here now. So I think I'm going to go do something else. Like I stopped trying.
I know what you mean. I think, yeah, no, that's very true.
I guess for some of us, it's like an expensive hobby or something, but for those of us that really take it seriously, and I know there's a lot that do, you just work your ass off. I mean, it's like, I think the journey is always more fun and more exciting than the destination. And it seems like with music, at least for me, it's always been the journey.
I get you. I get you.
And there's, now that I'm older and a tiny bit smarter, I think about it, and I'm like, I almost never want to get to that destination, because it's going to keep me driven and keep me working harder than if I were to get to that point and then sit back and be like, oh, I'm done now.
Because I know, because somehow it's funny you say that, somehow the journey feels a bit more honest. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, it's true, authentic hard graft that's going on, at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
I get you. And do you think running a label has influenced the way you look at life as an artist?
For a long time, I was doing what most artists do. I make music and then demo it, and then I would watch as the label, put out a promo, And then the release came out, and then like a week later, they were on to the next thing. And with records, the thing I remember is a record would come out and people would talk about that record for like 2 or 3 months, at least. While in the meantime, other records were coming up, but people would still talk about your record because they were holding it in their hand. The digital release thing about here today, gone tomorrow, that really started to kind of wear on me. So it's like, you know, there's so much amazing music out there and you miss it. You miss almost all of it if you're not on Beatport or whatever digital download site. If you're not on there every single day checking, you know, you can almost refresh the page and watch it all go away. Yeah. So it's like the here today, gone tomorrow aspect of it just really didn't sit with me. So the thing that immediately became obvious to me was you put out your own records, you do your own thing. That's what gets your foot in the door. That's what gets you recognized as an artist. It's the hard, and I know that sucks because I know artists that work incredibly hard at making really amazing music, and then they get record deals and they kind of get shafted in the end. Like nobody really, they get a record deal with all these promises up front, and then they don't, everybody forgets about them. Whereas record labels that care, that will put your music out there, whether it's on a CD or on a record, you know, physical media, or record labels that care to do more than just a standard digital release, like they put a little something behind it. That's when the artists are more happy and when they feel like they're being appreciated. And so
I agree.
With Science Cult, that's, first of all, we noticed that people were much more engaged with what we were doing once we started putting out vinyl records, because that's the first thing we did. People like took note. But then also the way that we like to put our releases out, we don't just want to be an assembly line of just constant stuff, you know? So the artists that work with us, for the most part, are fairly happy with the way we do things because they feel like they're being appreciated. And it goes beyond that. It's like having a record label became a platform for us in and of itself to express ourselves artistically even more. Because I'm an artist as a musician, but I'm also an artist visually. And with the first release, the thing I did is I wrote a science fiction story. And the science fiction story was something that you could get to from listening to the record. There's a little secret on the very first Science Cult release that'll lead you to a website where you can read a science fiction story I wrote, and it was just a more like furthering the expression. It gave me this whole new platform to express myself artistically. Like I do almost all the cover art for Science Cult, with the notable exception, of course, of the Singularity covers, like the Lee Holman and the Dakota release. Those were done by our friend in Wisconsin, Dustin Hockey, who does comic book art. And then we had Greta Haga doing the Lord Jalapenos cover. Really great artwork with all the machines and stuff on it. But we do a lot of our own artistic work on these because it gives us another way of experimenting with another type of art. You know, we've played around with AI art generation. We've played around with many different types of tools. I went to art school, so I'm a quote unquote trained artist. Even though that doesn't mean anything at all. But you know, it's more fun. It's a lot of fun, and you get to find out various new creative avenues for yourself. the important thing is you have to provide, well, you don't have to. This is just what we do. We like to provide a platform for our artists to also express themselves. So a lot of times with the releases, with the physical releases especially, I tell the artists, like, I want to hear your story. I want to know what it is about you that you were putting into this. And that's how we arrive at a lot of the things that we're doing, you know, like with Save the Robots. It's interesting because John Salway and DJ Hell, they were like, we have this track that we've never found a home for, and, you know, here it is. And then I kind of said, the first thing I said to them, I'm like, okay, so what's the story here? And at first they were a little bit like, well, you know, it's just a track. But then DJ Hell actually came back and he said, you know, John and I used to play at this club in New York called Save the Robots, and it was just this fascinating venue, and it was this really awesome. And he just started like going on and on about this club and how much he loved it and how much of a great time he had. And then John chimed in and was like, yeah, that really was a lot of fun. And I was like, okay, so now here's the story, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And then DJ Hell said, yeah, can we please call it Save the Robots? Because I remember that song and I remember this club. And so I said, okay, so now we have a story, we have a narrative. Because the narrative assigns it meaning, right? That makes it deeper, that makes it just more than just a track.
Yeah.
And then I said, so what's the visual inspiration? And DJ Hell is very much in love with Italo disco and the 1980s type look of that. So I said, okay. So I played around with some ideas and he wasn't particularly happy with it. And he kept sending me these ideas of like cocktails and things. And I said, yeah, you know, I still got to keep it somewhat science cult. But then we ended up doing the Suriyama, the robot girl.
Yeah.
And that's when he was like, oh yeah, that's it. I said, yeah, because you remember that was everywhere. Everywhere in the 80s we had the posters with the chrome robot girls, right? It's like, yeah, I remember. So we did that with the Afro rays. And then I said, you know, we'll do a cutout, and then the inner sleeve, it had the map of where the club was located with the center
really?
dot in
I
it.
didn't know. That's
Yeah.
nice.
So
Nice.
I drew the Google map. I redrew it for the back cover so that you would see exactly where this club was.
That's cool.
And so it's narrative. It's not just expressing the music, but it's expressing all the story, everything that goes with it.
Yeah.
And to me, that's always been what makes records really amazing. And not just records, it can be digital too. You can do this with digital.
Yeah,
there is product design in digital, but when it comes to physical, obviously product design becomes a lot more fun because you get to work with real materials. But still, and you get to tell a story, and you get to assign narrative. And if the narrative comes from the artist, or you help coax that narrative out of them a little bit.
Well, this is the thing, you can tease it out, because as you said, a lot of artists will just say, oh, well, I was just fucking around on this
exactly.
It's like, hang on, let's go up with more there. And there usually is more there, but as you say, it doesn't come naturally to people to just start to something. Yeah.
I mean, some people I work with, you know, we're doing the release with Poladroid in October.
Yeah.
And he was like, I was like, so what's the story here? What's the narrative? And he was immediately on that. Yeah. And he sent me volumes of excerpts from literature and images. And I mean, we had a whole like library of things to work from.
Wow.
And so I started putting together designs and ideas around that. And then I said, okay, I see where you're going with this. So I wrote a short story that would maybe steer us in a direction. And then he was like, okay. So he took that short story and then remixed it, if you will.
Yeah.
So him and I rewrote this story together that it's complete nonsense, right? But it's what the universe for his record is. It's what encapsulates his record and puts it in a universe of his own making, complete fiction. Most people will read this. It's on the back of the record.
Okay,
Most
cool.
people will read it and be like, this is complete nonsense. But it's exactly the thing that it's his story. It's what he wanted to say. It's his narrative. And then we played with the artwork for a long time. It was probably like a month and a half where we kept going back and forth on artwork. And then one day it was one of those like out of the blue moments, just fucking around, and I was like, how about I try this, which is kind of the same thing that happens with music too, right? Just kind of fuck around, and then all of a sudden you have a track. So I fucked around with some concepts and sent it over to him, and he's like, oh yeah, that's it. And it was what is now going to be the Son of Moloch cover and the artwork for it. But the process of how we started out, you know, we listened to the music, we signed the album, and then when we got to the artwork and the narrative, that's when it became really fun. So we developed a relationship with this artist as well, where we got to know each other a little bit better. So it wasn't just artist, record label. We're now friends. You know?
I know exactly what you mean. And you
better acquainted, if you will.
Well, I think that helps. Like, I mean, I'm trying to think, particularly the stuff the albums I did with Frank Cartel, very concept driven. And I think once you understand what the concept and the story is, that starts to drive. It affects the language you use when you do a Facebook post about the release. You know, it kind of it as you say, it makes the whole thing much deeper as an experience. And I think if you are a vinyl buying, which I guess most are, you're going to listen to the album and you're going to look at the map on the back. You're going to read the story that goes with it, and that just paints pictures for you along with the music. I think it's a beautiful thing. Then it's full respect for that. I think that's what a label should do. That's what a label should do.
Well, you know, the impetus for that was, first of all, I've been buying records since I was 17, so way back in the 90s. And many times I would come across a record where I would just be in awe of the artwork and all the little bits and bobs that were on it. Like, what is going on here? And then you'd find out that they would hide messages and things like that. But the big impetus was the last David Bowie album. Because when that album came out, the people that went out and bought the vinyl copy of it discovered very quickly that they had done something with that record, with that packaging, that was like chock full of secrets and secret messages and hidden things. Like, one guy accidentally left the record in his car for 5 minutes and the sun was shining on it, and he discovered that it had a UV activated ink.
I didn't know that, man.
That they used. And the black star, if you expose it to sunlight, if I read this correctly, you expose it to sunlight, it reveals stars. Like, there's something else going on there. And then he had all these hidden messages in the lyrics of the songs. And people are still figuring out that there's stuff that he hid on this record.
That's great.
Either within the lyrics or within the Spectrum audio data, kind of like Aphex Twin did. Or that it's in the artwork, that there's something about the ink that they use. Like, there's, it's like packed full of secret sauce, and that really had me going. I was like, man, that is so fucking cool. Like, I want to do something like that,
This is Blixabor. You're listening to Bass Agenda.
Say if you had the budget, so there's no limit kind of thing, what would you like to do as a vinyl kind of, or a package? You know?
I've always been fascinated with layers, how layers make up a whole Gestalt theory. And how different layers and transparencies can look really cool on their own, but then you put them together to create something completely different. And I've been thinking about like how would you do that with vinyl and packaging design, like where the outer jacket was either clear vellum paper with something printed on it or clear plastic, and then when you put the inner sleeve into it, it reveals the combination of the two creates a new image. And then if the inner sleeve is clear too, the record itself would become part of the image in some way, like thinking about how different layers, kind of like we did with Save the Robots, but a little bit deeper than that. With Save the Robots, it's like super obvious. Like there's the, it's the die cut, and then there's the inner sleeve, and then the record.
Yeah.
But
I see what you're saying though. You take it another step further, kind of thing.
Yeah, I would play around a lot with different materials and how they interact with each other when you slide them over each other. I've been really fascinated with this concept out of the Netherlands. It's called green vinyl, where they injection mold vinyl records. I don't know if this technology has taken off yet. I'm thinking it's probably still super expensive. But they were, yeah. Well, vinyl records right now, they're pressed in an old steam press with the vinyl granules. It's apparently not the most environmentally friendly thing in the world. No, there's a company in the Netherlands called Green Vinyl that invented an injection molding process where the quality is on par with real vinyl records. And when I first discovered this, I was like, man, there's so many cool things you could do with that. You could injection mold a USB stick or an RFID tag into the center of the record. So you could sell the vinyl with the digital together, and the digital would be on a USB stick that you could then reuse if you could figure out a way to
just pop it out of the
out
of the middle of it, like a jigsaw puzzle kind of thing. Man.
Or I used to build model kits. I used to love building model kits. So think about your record comes in a box and you have to assemble it by trimming it off the little plastic trees like you used to build model kits. And you'd have to put the two halves of the record together. and then
I love
put
that
the
idea.
label together, and the top of the label would have like a little building on it or something.
Yeah.
Like those are some ideas that I've had where if budget were unlimited, I would be on that.
That'd be amazing. Like a cross between Science Cult and IKEA, kind of.
without all the umlauts,
without all the shit. Yeah, but I mean, wouldn't that be cool? Wow, man, that would be very nice.
I love product design. I think product design is something that's sometimes heavily overlooked.
Something I thought about a while ago. This kind of fit. This is funny. I'm glad somebody else has these mad ideas. I quite like the idea. A friend of mine bought a 3D printer a while ago. In fact, he was one of the first people. He got it early as far as having one at home was concerned. And I love the idea that you could kind of send the code for a record to somebody and they could 3D print the vinyl at home or something like that.
Yeah, and
that's probably not too. I mean, we're kind of there. I think maybe. You just got to have the know-how.
There was that thing online where somebody used an electron microscope to look at vinyl records and a needle tracking the groove.
Oh, yeah. Wow, yeah.
So we're talking sub-micron levels of precision from a 3D printer.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
And I don't think that we're there yet. I think the lowest they go now is like 5 micron, I think. Like if you get the Prusa 3D printer, you get really fine looking prints, but you can still see the print lines.
Yeah.
So
we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. I think the idea is fantastic to be able to have a printer where you can take the vinyl record, like lift it out of a bath, and it'll be composed of the material that it's supposed to be in whatever color you want, and it's just pop it on and play it, and it's perfect.
Yeah.
That would be something else.
I like that idea actually, because that would be a single-use thing. Because of course, with the 3D printer, it's just piracy. That could be like endless copies. But what you've just oh man, there's so much potential. Keep playing that lottery, man.
Yeah. Hopefully one day, or if anything, just the idea itself, I think, is fascinating. Just to think about it and put the idea out there. And then maybe one day somebody will pick it up and be like, yeah, I'll do that. At least the idea has been put out there. Sharing the idea and the innovation, I think, is important as well.
So yeah, that gets the cogs whirring.
Yeah,
gets the hive mind onto the case. Yeah, man.
And I think it also speaks to the rarity of what needs to be associated with music. We need to have for the music industry as a whole needs to have a good long discussion about rarity and assigning quantity, because right now every piece of music that comes out, it's just fed into this machine and it's just duplicated a trillion times, to the point where there is no more you can no longer put a number on it, which is why on Spotify you get paid 1,000th of a penny or some bullshit like that. It's so fucking stupid. It's like, no, how about there's a record I heard in 1998 and it's still with me in my head. It was so seminal to me. I need to find this record, and you go on a journey and you find the record, and there's only ever been 200 copies of it pressed, right? The artist that made that record barely ate on that, but still there's that rarity, and it's the preciousness of that piece of music. Like, what if more music could be this way, where there's a finite amount of it, right? And that's what makes it precious. That's what makes it important. That's what makes it not qualify for the mass consumption through Spotify or through copy and paste sharing or anything like that.
And that makes it more memorable, more timeless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that in Electro. There's a lot of rarities in Electro where you really have to dig, you really have to look. And, there's a lot of Electro that hasn't even been discovered yet from 20, 30 years ago.
Oh man. I mean, every day's a school day.
It's so deep and so rich, and
it's incredible.
And not just electro, IDM, techno, and other kinds of electronic music. I found amazing electro tracks on albums that have absolutely nothing to do with any genre whatsoever. They're just weird little things that happen, you know.
Well, I had this chat with I don't know if you saw the show or heard it, but there's a guy in the UK called Dr. Billy Proctor who's writing a book on Electro.
I love that. I was watching or listening to that. I loved it. I was in the chat. Yeah.
Oh wait, sorry, man, my memory's terrible. But yeah, it was.
Okay.
I just love that. Like the Cat Stevens track is Dog a Donut. You know that. I mean, it's electro. I mean, it definitely fits in that sphere somehow. And yeah, I mean, I've loved Cat Stevens for years. I've never even thought about, you know, T for the Tillerman, but you wouldn't listen to that and think, oh, this guy's going to make an electro. It's just, and that's somebody well known. As you say, there are going to be people who barely appeared on people's radars who probably made some amazing stuff. You know, these little B-sides and shit.
Dr. Dre recorded a record in the 80s called Techno City, and it's full on electro.
I've heard that.
It's almost like a Planet Funk clone. Like you listen to it and you're like, he tried to copy them, but it's a great record. Or this is a crazy example. Paul McCartney recorded a proto techno track in 1981.
Oh, really?
Like and I can't remember the name of it. I saw it somewhere, and somebody said this is proto techno, recorded by Paul McCartney, and he had, you know, it was drum machines and synthesizers and him singing through something like a vocoder, and I was like, that's kind of cool. Like Paul McCartney, wow.
We're not talking about the frog chorus here, are we?
No, no, but I was blown away by it, and it's another one of those things, like he just kind of did it and then it kind of got forgotten, right? But yeah, there's so much, there's such a depth of things where you can still find stuff. there's cases where your own ambitions will overtake the core narrative of what the artist is essentially trying to do with the release.
Oh yeah, and the values of the scene. I think going back to what you were saying about people being supportive, etc. You know, there are certain people that I think, you know, they sometimes forget that actually this is about connecting people, and that, you know, it's driven by love and creativity. Doesn't happen often, but
to use a strange idiom, you have to pick your lane. If you're a creative person and you have really great artistic ideas about product design and things like, okay, if you have something that you want to do that is really outrageous and just really far out, do it with your own music, because then you're the only one at risk. If you're using another artist's music to do this like crazy stuff, maybe the artist isn't fully on board with it. Like at first they'll be like, oh yeah, that's really cool, as anybody would be like, oh, that's really awesome. But then it gets so far away from the artist that you now start putting yourself as the top name on the project, and the artist is like, well, I'm second now on my own release, like what's going on? So
I think
it's important to pick your lane. If you're going to do something risky, do it with your own music, and then see how it works. And if you have the money and the wherewithal to do it, then okay. But don't put someone else's creative output at risk. Just do it with your own, because then it also helps you better connect the music with the narrative and the art that you're trying to project, you know. So if you want to do like wooden boxes and plexiglass and screen printing, a limited edition of 50, great, but do it on your own. Do it by yourself, and then document the journey. Document how you figured out how to get the laser cutting for the wood. Document where you got the records pressed in such limited quantity. Document who you got to do screen printing. If you do the screen printing yourself, document how you arrived at that journey. You know, I'm not just an artist, I'm also a maker. So I build a lot of things. Like I built the studio that I'm sitting in. I built the furniture in here. Cool. I do a lot of tinkering with synthesizers. And as a maker, iterative processes are really important, because I'm always learning how to do something better, how to improve precision on something. You know, like the first piece of furniture you build, you're like, oh, really proud of it, looks great. And then 5 years later, you look at it and you're like, I didn't realize it was half crooked. So as you continue to make and build things, you have to document your own process and understand what you've learned. It's the same with music. I'm constantly learning. I mean, I do audio engineering, I do mastering for the label, but I'm still learning. I'm still figuring things out.
So Lifeform on Avoidant. Man, that's a heavy one. I love it.
I actually really like that track.
I
love that track.
It's great. Yeah. Why is it important to you, man?
Because it's the direct result of me literally. We were at my dad's house in Texas for Christmas. Okay. And I was bored sitting on the couch with my laptop, and I was like, I'm just gonna fuck around. So I was working with this plugin called Microtonic from Sonic Charge, or Mutonic. And I was like, I wonder if I just stick like a shit ton of LFOs on all the controls and just make everything like wiggle like really fucking crazy, and then play like a sequence. And then out came this like, rah, 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 you know, this essentially what Lifeform, the main sound. Man, that sounds like some beast in a cage trying to get out, but it's nothing that we know of on this planet.
Yeah, that's it, man. It's a big beast in Star Wars.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh yeah, I gotta do something with this, and then I wrote some heavy ass beats behind it. You know, I didn't because I don't I don't personally like using traditional like 808, 909 type stuff. I have a drum machine or drum synth that I built in Reactor, and then I like to use other drum synths that don't produce normal drum sounds.
Right. I get you.
So I like doing a lot of my own shit, and I have a lot of like weird little things here. Like I have this. I'll show it to you. I just got this recently. It's called a rhythm box.
Okay.
And it's made by this guy in Seattle. It's a 3D printed case, really well made. Everything is pretty straightforward, but when you turn it on and play with it, like it makes absolutely no sense. And it makes the most insane sounding drum sounds and rhythms, and it's different every time. Wow. You know, I love weird shit like that. So, but yeah, with Lifeform, I was playing around with it and just sitting on my dad's couch. I recorded the track. I had a little Korg nano controller in my lap, and then just sat there and just recorded the track, and that was it. That was.
I love the idea of you sitting in this really chilled environment with your family.
Yeah.
Creating this absolute fucking monster. That's fantastic.
It's just me finding some time and filling in boredom and having a little bit of fun and just,
So that's your Christmas record then. This is.
Yeah, I guess.
It's really cool, man. Really love that one. It's so heavy as well.
That was me and Jimmy, James Freer, the guy I run Science Bowl with. One of my best friends, one of the nicest people in the world I know. He's a huge UMEK fan. Like that's
okay.
He's huge UMEK fan. So when we signed UMEK, he was, of course, like stars in his eyes. And then he started working on the remix. He's got some other things going on in his life, and he kind of got distracted with the remix, and he could never get it to a place where he was really happy with it.
Okay.
And then he said, you know, do you want to do the remix together? Because I really want to do the remix, but I'm not getting anywhere with it. So he sent me all the parts that he had done. And then I basically took his remix ideas and then remixed them again.
Hi, this is UMEK, aka Zeta Reticula, and you are listening to Bass Agenda.
It was kind of coincidence. At the time I was already working on some like beats where I was just me being bored, fucking around with drum machines, having fun. And I was like, oh, this will actually kind of go great with this, and then just put it together over the course of a couple of days and sent it to him. And he's like, okay. And then I said, can I get a recording of you speaking into a crappy microphone and just saying no to tech, and just like in this like completely careless kind of voice. And he's like, really? So he recorded himself saying no to tech, no to tech, no to tech. Just like really lackluster performance.
Yeah.
And I put that right in the track with a vocoder. And he's like, you just put that in. And I was like, yeah, it sounds great though, right? And he's like, yeah, somehow weirdly does.
Well, it does. It's got that kind of dispassionate, robotic thing going on, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't collaborate with people ever, really, because I'm really shit at collaborating with people. I'm just terrible at it. But with him, I collaborate really well. He's just one of the rare people that I can collaborate with.
trying to think. There's one track of yours we've missed out here somewhere. Oh, Their World. This is from the new release, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Really cool. And,
Thank you.
Again, I mean, that actually the new release from start to finish. I'm really digging it.
Thank you.
Really cool, man. So yeah, why that one for you?
Okay, so I've been a steady consumer of science fiction since I was 3 years old.
Okay.
So I'm a proper nerd. I'm a geek. I'm a Trekkie. I'm a Star Wars guy. I love science fiction, and I love all the concepts with it. And I've been listening to electronic music for pretty much most of my life.
Right.
So for me, the connection with the music and the visuals between sci-fi are always been really, really key. And I've been thinking a lot about like where are things heading, the future of humanity, and the eventual melding of technology and humanity to what they famously like to refer to as the singularity.
Yeah.
Where computing power will surpass the amount of brain power, and then we can become digitally transferred.
Yeah.
More relatable from Black Mirror, the San Junipero episode, right? Where they stick a little dot on the side of your head, and you're living inside this world for the rest of eternity, and it's really just in a computer.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about that, and I'm thinking about like, eventually that's going to happen, and there's nothing preventing it from happening currently. But at the same time, it's like, how do we make that transition? How do we transition from flesh and blood to something else, a completely new kind of existence, whether that's cybernetic, cyborg, or eventually being completely digitally transferred into digital consciousness. And so I approached the EP with this thought of like, who do you think you are, right? And by who do you think you are, it's in that Descartes kind of sense of it's who you think yourself to be. And then who do you want to be in that world? Who do you want to be in their world? Because ultimately, any kind of digital consciousness transference or any kind of new way of existing, like in Ready Player One, for example, where the immersion technology, someone is going to figure out a way to profit off of that by advertising.
Oh, for sure.
And then it's going to be this new world for a short time, because before it becomes someone else's, because they're profiting off of your consciousness and your thoughts and things. So who do you want to be in that world? What do you think you're going to be? Are you going to be somebody that's going to exist freely in that? Or are you going to be a product? We're already products of technology. Anybody that has a Facebook account, you're a product. Make no mistake about it. You're part of a marketing measure and a weekly marketing meeting call. You're a number, you know?
Commodity.
Who do we want to be in that world? So it's thinking about the larger implications of how we interact with technology and how technology is taking advantage of us, and how much control can we and do we want to retain over that? You know, how much are we sharing about ourselves to make available to the large machine that is turning us into a product? I know that's like super philosophical and meta and all kinds of
I
crazy,
like it. I get it, man.
I do think about these things.
Yeah. No, for sure. I get it. Yeah. Brilliant. So that's the theme across the EP, or
it's
this
the theme
track?
across the EP. Yeah. It's kind of like, with the notable exception of it's all just talk. The voicemail message that I put in there, that's an old friend that died many years ago.
Okay.
That's him talking.
Wow.
In that voicemail. And so when I rediscovered that in my hard drive, I was like, I gotta put a track. I gotta put that in the track.
Wow. That's crazy. So you came across the voicemail in recent time?
Yeah. One of my best friends had recorded, he had a tape answering machine. This was 25 years ago, almost 30 years ago.
Right.
And our mutual friend kept calling every day and leaving voicemails and would just go on and on and on. And he recorded the tapes digitally and then gave me the recordings and said, "This is him.
Wow.
Just do something with it." And I had it sitting in my samples folder for decades. And, you know, again, bored, looking for new ideas, going through my samples folder, and there it is. There's all the voicemails. And I'm like, I remember those are the voicemails. So I listened to them. And I was like, I wonder if this would go well with this track I'm working on. Chucked it in, put a ring modulator on it, and I'm like, perfect.
That's beautiful. That's
it
beautiful.
It just
man.
worked, you know.
That's beautiful. I like that, man. I'm going to listen to that again straight after this. That's really cool.
Anna Hauf und ihr hört Bass Agenda Radio.
Got something I'm going to mispronounce, I guess. Is it Liebknecht, Barcelona? Liebknecht. There you go.
Yeah, Liebknecht. One of my favorite artists, Daniel Maya.
Great stuff.
We have a lot of respect for each other's work. He is a really, really cool guy. I really love his work. I love his production. He puts a lot of production value into what he does. He really spends the time to make sure that everything is super balanced. I love his meticulous approach. And he approached us for a release, and the first thing I thought of, we got to put him on Astra Spectra, and then I'll do a remix of it. Yeah, and I had a lot of fun with that remix. I love that remix.
It's great, man. Really nice.
Thank you.
How do you approach remixes differently? I mean, I'm assuming you do, because you've not created a lot of the sounds that are in there.
I'm going to get this wrong, because it was a long time ago that I read this, so I'm going to get it wrong. So if anyone listens to this, please correct me in the comments. But I believe it was Kenny Larkin that said, I do not listen to the whole track. I just ask them for the parts. There's either Carl Craig or Kenny Larkin that said that, and I do the same thing. I've always done it this way. I never listen to the track. I listen to a snippet, and then if I'm feeling it, I'm like, I want to remix that. And then I have him send me the parts, and then I treat the parts as a toolkit to create something new.
I get you.
And I kind of set a little, like if there's a vocal, then I know, okay, I got to keep the vocal in there, right? So I got to keep that relation in there. But I treat all the parts as if they were just something for me to make something completely new with.
I get you.
So they send me the stems. I check the drums out. I don't, because I want to write my own drums. I want my own drum groove on it. And then I'll listen to the bass line or the synth parts, and then see how they interact with each other. And then I go right into experimenting. Like, how badly can I fuck this up before it becomes completely unrecognizable?
I love that I love that principle, man. How can I fuck this up? And that's where the good stuff comes from. I love that. That's
yeah.
Time to check out Syrte's influences now, kicking off with Plastikman and Fuck.
You know, in high school, I had a room in my dad's house called the DJ room, where I had my turntables, my mixer, and then me and my friends would hang out and we would just listen to music. We would go to the record store and we would listen to ska and punk and alternative, and then techno and jungle and breakbeats and just whatever. You know, whatever we had spent our money on that night, we'd just sit around and listen to records. And that particular track was like one that we listened to a lot, because there's just something about that repetitive beat that really had us like hooked, you know?
Yeah, it's really subtle. I don't know. I mean, a lot of his stuff is very, you can't quite put your finger on it, but there's really something that draws you in. You know, you could listen to a 35-minute version of the same track and you wouldn't get bored. You know?
Exactly. There's like subtle little changes that happen throughout. That it's on a subconscious level, really.
And then, of course, we've got to talk about Aphex. So Analog Bubble Bath 1. I think I'll probably play ISO Protelex out of the just because I think it'll fit, and I love that little child voice.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that for the first time, and I don't think I'd ever heard anything so surprising in music before. I was just like,
it just quits, and then it's la 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 la.
I was like, what the fuck is that? I was just, but yeah.
There's something about IDM that I love, and that is we're as people, humans are naturally attuned to adaptability. Like we are pattern recognizers, but we also naturally are tuned to adapt, right?
Yeah.
Whenever we listen to new music and we allow ourselves to listen to it and process it, neuroplasticity is the thing that rewires your brain to process this new input. I think that's also a really good exercise for anyone trying to challenge themselves creatively. Listen to something that you've never listened to before and try to like work through it. I'm not saying you need to sit down and start listening to country music if you're a techno artist, but maybe try listening to some jazz or something else. But IDM, the first thing it did for me was like completely rewired my brain. And Aphex Twin, Music, or Mike Paradinas, Autechra, you know, that's the stuff that really did that for me, where it was like, it really forced me to completely change the way I was thinking. And that's why I love Aphex Twin, and especially that analog bubble bath, because it's lush and beautiful, but it's sonically challenging because it's not, it's a bit atonal. did not like, or he still doesn't like using classical scales.
No.
He likes being atonal and not even microtonal like people think, that he sits down and writes calculations. I think he probably just kind of tweaks his shit a little to where it's not quite right. And that's where it's exactly where it needs to be for him, you know.
I think you're probably right. Yeah.
Just be off, you know, and I love that.
Yeah.
Because it challenges you to go, okay, I got to work my way through this a little, you know.
Yeah.
happening, party people? This is Esteban Adame, and you're listening to my homie on Bass Agenda.
Quadrus. That's a great track, man. I like that.
I'm a big fan of Steve Rachmad.
He's great, man.
I love his work. He has this beautiful, lush, futuristic sound. This these floaty synths and stuff, and it's very dubby, right? It has a dubby feel to it.
Yeah.
But the first time I heard his tracks, I was like, oh my god. It had, that shimmering Juno that he has throughout a lot of his tracks. It just kind of grabs you, and then he has a really beautiful sense of melody. And he knows how to write beats. He's one of those people that can take a 909 and not make it sound like a 909 right off the bat. He makes it sound thicker and heavier and deeper. So that's why I love his sound. And same with the other track that I mentioned to you, Son of Norma.
Oh yes.
Yes. that's from 1993. Still one of my favorite tracks of all time. I absolutely love that track. It's just so simple and so well put together, and the way that that shimmering synth sound that just undulates throughout the whole track. I just love it. Yeah,
it's great. It's really nice, man. And it's one of those tracks that really sums up the less is more kind of principle of good techno, isn't it? It's like, as you say, it's simple, but
17-year-old me hanging out in the warehouse in the middle of the night at a rave, hearing that coming on, just going, whoa, like, this is cool, you know?
Those are the moments, man. Really, really cool.
I was going to ask you about the tracks that you make, because you are on the more abstract experimental side of things, I guess, but as far as certainly for electro. And I was thinking, how do you know when a track is finished? Because I'll just explain my thinking, because a lot of electro, there's like an essential ingredient that appears in 90% of electro. So you've got the drum track, you've got the bass line, you've got the break in the middle, you've got the long lead in, the long lead out, and that applies to a huge amount of electro. And I'm not saying that that's bad, but that's just a fact. But with your stuff, you're far more. I mean, some of your tracks get straight to it. Some of your tracks are a little bit more, build up. But there's so many great elements going on. I love your sound. But I just wonder how do you get to the point where you think, right, that track is done? Do you know what I mean? Because you're working with structures that are not conventional structures, I guess.
It's a really great question. It's an iterative process, for one. So I do tons and tons of sketching.
Right.
And I've talked about this before. When you're in the work, you sketch and sketch and sketch and sketch. So you don't start, it's not Bob Ross, right? You don't start painting happy little mountains and happy little trees. It doesn't work that way. You're sketching, you're constantly sketching. And that's 90% of a track for me, is that I'm constantly sketching. I sit on the couch late at night with my laptop and I write beats and melodies and stuff, and then I'm like, oh, that's cool, And then I do a save as, and then I fuck it up just on purpose, completely screw it up, because I really just want to know how badly can I mess this up, and then by doing that I create something entirely new, and then I'm like, oh, that's cool, or it's shit and I just chuck it, and then I start over and I start something else.
I guess by doing that,
so
you kind of get, sorry mate, I guess by doing that you kind of create your own happy accidents.
You create the happy accidents, you create usable bits and pieces and ideas, and sometimes it just kind of clicks, like it just comes in. You just sit down, you sketch, and then all of a sudden it just happens, and you're like, track. And then you either jump on it or you don't. And if you jump on it and you record it, and this is where knowing if a track is finished or not, I guess it comes down to your process. There are people that like to draw the track out in the arrangement view, like bit by bit, and that works perfectly for them. And then they'll record automation and they do it all bit by bit, and then they, it's like creating a digital picture. For me, it has to be live. Like, I record every track as a live performance. And I do it in Ableton so that all of the movements are captured, and maybe some of the mistakes are captured, and then I take that and I get out of that right brain mode and I go into left brain analytical mode, and then I start to analyze, okay, the structure of the song, and where do things need to be. Like, I know I want this to be a 3.5 minute track because it's kind of chill. It's 135 BPM maybe. Okay, well, when I recorded it as a performance, it turned out to be 6.5 minutes, which to me is far too long for something like this. So then I start editing it down. But it's always, I think it's part of having been a DJ for as long as I have, because with DJing, you kind of feel when it's the right moment to bring in another track. You feel it. You're listening and you're feeling, and okay, this is the right moment to bring in the next track.
Time for a change. Yeah.
Even if it's in the middle of a breakdown, you bring in another intro, and you're super nervous because you're trying to make sure it's on beat. But still, you pick that moment and you do it by feeling, by what feels right, because you're also in the music, you're dancing. And that's the way it is with tracks. The way I know it's done is I've developed a process for myself where I very meticulously switch from right brain creative mode to left brain analytical mode. Right brain is all the creative ideas are down. They're recorded, they're down, or I've taken notes on them, or I've recorded the effects. I've done all the creative work. Now I do the analytical work, putting it together. And that's the part where I make the decision on the length of the track and where things go, and then I spend even more time in a separate DAW doing the mix down and processing everything meticulously to make sure that there's balancing, and that to me is the part where the track is done. The track has been done for a long time because the creative part of me has already recorded it, and that flow is already in my head. But then the analytical side is what does all the polishing and finishing. Because I used to work purely creatively. I would just record it, and then I would just save it as a pre-master, quote unquote, and then send it to the label, who would then go, yeah, the mastering engineer just told me that your mixing is shit. Can we start over, please? Because that happened to me a lot. I would send tracks to a mastering engineer, and they'd be like, what in the hell are you doing? This is horrible. So you have to snap yourself out of the creative mode and become analytical so that you can then polish. And that's the part where you learn to finish a track properly.
Makes sense.
So the live performance aspect of it, that's the track finished for you in your head. The analytical process is finishing the track in a format that can now be processed further for mastering and for pressing on record or putting it out on a release. If that's the end goal, of course. I really love the Moog DFAM a lot. Because it's one of those weird little semi-modular synths that there's just something about it. Like, you can get it to behave like a drum machine if you want to,
right? But
you can also get it to behave like a synth. You can get it to make pad sounds. It's something that where it's weird is at the core, right?
Okay.
It's not intended to be a normal thing. It was never intended to be a one-trick pony. Like, there's a subharmonicon. I had the subharmonicon in the studio for a little while, and it sounds great. And I know there's people that love it, so I'm not dissing on it. But to me, the subharmonicon was a one-trick pony. It did one thing and one thing really well, and that's kind of where it ended. And so for me, that became uninteresting really quickly. The DFAM, it's just, there's something weird going on with it. You can get that thing to sound so weird, so alien, so out of this world. You can get it to talk. You can get it to make drum sounds like thundering basses and snares and hi-hats and all kinds of stuff. And then you can get it to be really nice and make these lush, weird sounding pads that have this gritty texture to it. So that's one of my go-tos. I also really enjoy the UHE plugins a lot, like the Ace and the Bacille and the Heckman plugins. I don't know if you're familiar with those. I recently got a Virus TI, and I'm really loving it because it's a really great palette of like different sounds, but you can create stuff with it very easily. I really love creating new sounds. Cool. And I like weird toys. I like weird shit. Like, I got this thing called the Mega FM, which uses the Sega Mega or Sega. It's called the Mega in Europe, and in America it was called the Sega something or other. I can't remember. I didn't play much video games, but it uses the voice chips from a Sega video game console as FM chips.
Right, I see.
It is utterly insane, and I love it because you can adjust every parameter. Because with FM, you can't always adjust all the parameters. On this thing, you can.
Wow.
And everything is automatable. You can automate the arpeggiator in like some really wild and crazy ways. I love things that have weird or different at the core, or things that were intended to be something but never quite made it. Like, I guess the best example would be the 303. The 303 was intended to be a bass guitar replacement, but it never made it there, not even close. But it became something completely unique on its own. Pearl Concussion is one of my favorites because, again, it's just, if you tweak it too much, it starts spitting out weird sounds, and that's exactly my kind of thing, right? I can get it to sound like a drum machine if I want to, but the fact that it lets me do so many weird things, I can get more out of it that way.
So you're definitely into the manipulation side of things, and
I'm into the manipulation side of things. I'm into things that were that are one-offs. Like I have this thing over here. I'll show it to you. It's called a Sismo.
Okay.
Quadrux, and it's made by this super talented guy. It's either in Brazil or Colombia. I can't remember. It's in South America.
Okay.
He's in South America. He makes these. He sells them on Reverb. They're amazing.
I'm assuming these things are very limited. I mean, there's probably not many of these units around that you.
Oh no, these are basically like garage projects, right? These are things that people build in their garages. I mean, yeah, hand cut aluminum plates with drilled out holes. Bought the knobs on some marketplace, but it sounds so fucking cool, and it just makes weird shit. It just makes weird noises. I have a synth in here somewhere that's made out of wood. I don't even know where it is. But a guy just hand wired it, hand etched the circuit board, and sold it on Etsy. The controls are made out of balsa wood or something like that. It makes weird fucking sound. I love stuff like that.
That sounds great.
And yeah, I know I won't be able to find parts for it, or in 20 years, or it may break. But that's, I think, the best part about stuff like this is
it's almost part of the charm, isn't it? In a weird way. Yeah, I get you. Yeah. Wow, that's cool, man. Some interesting choice there. So yeah, Lord Jalapeno, man, that's some great. He's somebody else I need to speak to, interview at some point, I think.
He's one of my favorite people. Absolutely love him. He's such a wonderful person. He's so humble, and he's somebody that takes pleasure in little things. I asked him about how he came up with the name, and he said, "I was sitting in my car eating lunch, and I love jalapenos." and I was laughing to myself about how I am the Lord of the Jalapenos. And that's how I came up with the name. And I thought that was so beautiful and so humble, and I'm like, that's so cool, you know?
It's almost childlike, isn't it? It's like really...
Yeah,
I love that.
You're having this moment with yourself where you just kind of laugh to yourself. Like, it's a little bit of joy, you know? And then it turns into something where you're like, yeah, I'm going to call it something. I'm going to call it that, Lord Jalapenos.
Right, it's memorable.
I love his sound. I love his approach to making music. He's somebody that he puts a lot of his emotions and a lot of his passion into the music. He works very hard. He tries really hard. He's on the journey. Like I said at the beginning of our conversation, he's on that journey. So he's really like fucking going for it, and I just love that. Yeah.
Hello, this is Carl Finlow, and you're listening to Bass Agenda.
then you mentioned Daniel Meyer earlier. So this is the guy behind the Liebknecht. Say it wrong again.
Liebknecht.
Sorry. Typical Brit, can't fucking do it. So yes, so this is his track under his real name.
Yep. Well, I've been a fan of Sonic Groove for a long time. I've been to the record store in New York actually when I visited there. Really cool people. I got to meet Frankie Bones.
Okay, cool.
Who's like really funny. He's this hilarious guy. Got to meet Frankie Bones, Heather Hart. I briefly met Adam X at the time, but he wasn't very talkative. He was having sort of like a day. So he was just like, I was like, hey, you're Adam. Of course, I'm 17, right? And I was like, hey, you're Adam X. And he's like, yeah, so, okay, I'm leaving. But Frankie's
brother, of course.
Yeah, but he was really fucking cool. Frankie Bones was really cool.
Yeah.
I told him he asked me where I'm from, and I said, I'm visiting from Texas. I was living in Texas at the time. So he made fun of me for a little bit, and then he showed me some really amazing records. But yeah, I love Sonic Groove, and I have a lot of respect, of course, for Daniel's work. I think his production is just fucking stellar. So when he announced that he was putting out the record, I listened to some samples of it and I immediately went out and got it. I just think it's a really great intersection of the music that he's been making so far, like the electro informed stuff and the harder techno stuff, but then he still puts that more industrial sound into it as well. So it's this wonderful marriage of these different kinds of sounds, all of which he does. Like he has this band called How Job. He's done drum and bass, he's done breaks, he's done so many different genres.
So yeah, as far as the future's concerned,
so the final Astra Spectra, the 8th in the series, is coming out July 19th, or by the time this airs, it will have already come out.
Yes.
And that is titled 396.847. And then I've been working with a collective out of England called the Hybrid Collective. Led by Kim Cosmic. And we've put together a little vinyl various artists compilation. It's Kim Cosmic, Arsonist Recorder, Broken Joe, The Droid, Ikata, and myself. Really wonderfully talented, great group of people, 6 tracks on one record. So that's coming out the beginning of August, and I'm playing a live performance in London at Eclectic. Just a wonderful group of people. I love all of them. They're just really passionate. And then the week after, I'm playing in Charleroi in Belgium. I'm pretty sure I didn't pronounce that name correctly, with Poladroid and Paralog. Paralog is also an artist. He just had a release out on Science Cult. Really fantastic electro release. And then Poladroid, he has the release coming out in November. In October.
This is Kim Cosmic, and you're listening to Bass Agenda.
Other than that, we're just going to keep working on Science Cult. We have some really cool releases planned for 2024. The 2024 vinyl release schedule is pretty much booked up.
Right.
We're going to stop doing digital releases at the end of the year. I'm at the very, very beginnings of working on an album for Syrte. A solo album. I've been getting a lot more into IDM, IDM and ambient, and just continuing this trek of trying to make electro that's not electro. Making
exactly,
or just having fun and making some cool music and not calling it anything at all.
I was going to say, it doesn't have to have a name, man, does it? Going to end the show with another track from that hybrid compilation that Syrte mentioned. This one from Ikata, nice track called Dark Drive. Great stuff from Syrte. Love and thanks out to him for taking part in Bass Agenda. Make sure you keep an eye on him. And of course, the amazing Science Cult label. Lots coming up in the pipeline. As always, if you head over to patreon.com/bassagenda over the weekend, you can get a voice-free version of the show, early access to the whole episode that you've just been listening to, and a load of other great stuff as well. Next month, we'll be looking into that album by Poladroid that Syrte mentioned earlier on in the show. Really cool stuff. I know you're going to like it. Interview with him as well, of course, and much more besides. Until then, thanks for listening and take care. Cheers.
Listen to me. What we do here, it's fucking essential. It's like oxygen. The world's dying of 1,000 heart attacks. We heal them up. It's a goddamn public service what we do. That's the only reason to make music. Music.